there is a dream you have had before. And tonight it came back again. The same one. Almost unchanged. Sleep science has a quiet name for this. The dreaming brain, returning. Night after night. To emotional material it has not finished carrying. It is not a flaw in you, and it is not a message you failed to read. The unsettling part is this. A dream that keeps returning does not mean it is being solved. The loop can run for months, even years, without ever quite closing. Welcome to Sleepy Science. So tonight we follow that loop gently. Not to break it, and not to promise it an ending, only to understand what the sleeping mind keeps reaching back toward. Let the day settle out of your shoulders, behind your closed eyes. A quiet mind is already drifting back to what the hours could not put down, needing nothing from you now, asking for no effort at all. And so the first question drifts in, slowly, the way the dream itself returns. Why does the same scene come back to you, night after night, sometimes for years on end? Somewhere in the quiet of sleep, a scene you have visited before begins again. The same street, the same locked door, the same feeling of not being ready. Scientists call this a recurring dream, and it is among the most common experiences the sleeping mind offers. The question that will follow us gently through this hour is a simple one, though its answer is not, why does the same dream scenario replay on a loop? Sometimes for years, researchers who study sleep have found that these repetitions are rarely random. They tend to carry weight, emotion, a sense of something left unfinished. Tonight we begin softly, tracing what recurring dreams are before we ask what they might quietly mean. You are far from alone in this. When researchers survey large groups of adults, somewhere between 60 and 75% report having experienced a recurring dream at some point in their lives. The Canadian dream scientist Antonio Zadra and his colleagues have documented this pattern across many studies, and the numbers stay remarkably steady from one to the next. It means that most people, at one time or another, have returned to the same nightly scene more than once. For some, it happens across a single stressful week. For others, it stretches across decades, arriving and fading, and arriving again. The sheer commonness of it suggests these dreams are not a malfunction, but something the sleeping brain does often, and for reasons worth understanding. What exactly makes a dream recurring? Rather than simply familiar dream, researchers draw the line at repetition of content. The same core scenario returning across separate nights, often with the same setting, the same predicament, the same emotional tone. A single, vivid dream, however memorable, is not recurring. Neither is a general theme that reshapes itself each time. The defining feature is a scene that repeats closely enough. On waking, you recognize it as one you have lived before in sleep. Some recurring dreams stay almost identical for years. Others keep their emotional shape while their details drift. This distinction matters, because the tighter the repetition, the more it seems to point towards something specific the mind keeps returning to. There is a curious pattern hidden inside recurring dreams. Most of them are unpleasant. When people describe the scenes that come back to them, the themes cluster around a small set of predicaments: falling, being chased, arriving unprepared, losing teeth, searching for a room that cannot be found. Studies by Zadra and others suggest that the large majority of recurring dreams carry fear, worry, or a sense of threat. Pleasant recurring dreams exist, but they are the minority. This tilt toward difficulty is one of the earliest clues to what these dreams might be doing. Whatever the sleeping mind is rehearsing, it seems drawn again and again to the situations that once left us most uneasy. Most vivid dreaming, including the recurring kind, unfolds during a stage of sleep called REM, rapid eye movement, sleep. Several times a night, your brain shifts into this state, its activity rising close to waking levels while your body stays still and deeply relaxed. During REM, regions tied to emotion and memory grow, especially active, while the areas responsible for logic and self-monitoring quiet down. This particular chemistry may be why dreams feel so real, yet follow such strange rules. A recurring dream tends to surface within these REM windows, built from the same emotional materials each time. Knowing sleep's architecture helps explain why certain scenes return. They are assembled by a brain running the same nightly process, drawing from the same well. While you sleep, your brain does something remarkable with the day behind you. It replays it. In studies of both animals and people, researchers have watched the hippocampus, a small, seahorse-shaped structure deep in the brain, reactivate patterns of activity that first appeared during waking experience. This replay is thought to help move memories into longer-term storage. Some scientists believe dreams are partly a felt version of this process, the mind sifting through recent and older experiences and weaving them into story. If replay favors the memories that carry the most emotional charge, then a scene tied to something unresolved might be revisited more often than others. A recurring dream may be replay that keeps returning to the very same file. Not all memories are treated equally during sleep. The brain appears to prioritize the ones that matter most. Experiences marked by strong emotion, surprise, or importance. A structure called the amygdala helps tag these moments as significant. And during REM sleep, those tagged memories seem more likely to be reactivated. This may be why your dreams so often circle around what worries or moves you, rather than the neutral details of an ordinary afternoon. A recurring dream, seen this way, could be the sleeping brain returning to a memory it has flagged as unfinished business. The emotion attached to the original moment acts almost like a bookmark, one the mind keeps opening to, night after night, without quite closing the page. There is a narrow doorway between sleeping and waking, and it is where dreams are most often remembered. Scientists call this the hypnopompic state, the soft, drifting minutes as you rise toward consciousness in the morning. In this in-between, the images of a dream linger before the waking mind dissolves them. If you have ever surfaced with a recurring scene still vivid behind your eyes, only to feel it slip away as you reach for it, you have met the hypnopompic state. Because recurring dreams tend to arrive in the long REM periods near morning, they are especially likely to be caught in this doorway. It is often the only moment we ever consciously hold what the night has been quietly doing. One influential idea in dream science is called the continuity hypothesis. It proposes that dreams are not separate from waking life, but continuous with it. That whatever occupies your mind by day tends to reappear, transformed, by night. Under this view, a recurring dream reflects a recurring concern, a worry, a relationship, a pressure that has not yet settled. The dream does not invent the theme from nothing. It draws on what the waking self keeps circling. This helps explain why recurring dreams so often intensify during difficult chapters of life and soften when things ease. The scene that returns may be less a message than a mirror, quietly reflecting whatever the mind has not yet been able to set down. Pause for a moment with what has gathered so far. We began with a simple question: why the same dream returns, sometimes for years, and already the shape of an answer is forming. These dreams are common, usually uneasy, built during REM from memories the brain has marked as important, and continuous with the concerns of waking life. Seen together, they start to look less like glitches and more like a process, the mind returning to what remains unresolved. But noticing that a dream reflects something is not the same as knowing what it is doing there. That deeper question, whether the replay is merely reflecting or actively working towards something, is where the coming steps of tonight will gently lead. Why would nature allow so many of our dreams to be frightening? One answer comes from the Finnish researcher Antti Revonsuo, who proposed what he called the threat simulation theory. He suggested that dreaming evolved, in part, as a kind of safe rehearsal, a way for the ancient brain to practice recognizing and escaping danger while the body rested. Under this idea, a recurring dream of being chased or trapped might be the mind running the same survival drill again and again. It is a theory, still debated among scientists, and not every dream fits it. But it offers one gentle way to picture the loop. Perhaps the scene returns because some part of you is still, harmlessly, practicing how to meet it. Some sleep scientists describe dreaming as a kind of overnight processing for emotion. The neuroscientist Matthew Walker has suggested that REM sleep may help soften the sharp edges of difficult memories, keeping the information while easing the distress attached to it. In this view, dreams revisit emotional experiences in a calmer chemical setting, where certain stress signals are naturally lowered. A recurring dream might then be the mind returning to a feeling it is still trying to metabolize, replaying the emotional core until it grows more bearable. This idea remains under active study, and researchers do not all agree on how much settling actually occurs. Still, it frames the loop kindly, not as the mind stuck, but as the mind slowly at work. Here, it is worth being honest about the edges of what we know. That dreams help process emotional memory is reasonably well supported. Many studies point towards sleep, and REM in particular, playing a role in how feelings are stored and eased. But the further claim that a recurring dream is actively resolving a conflict remains a theory rather than a settled fact. Researchers still debate whether these dreams accomplish anything, or whether they simply reflect what has not yet resolved on its own. Tonight we will hold both ideas gently, without forcing a conclusion. The mind returning to a scene may be working towards something, or may be showing us the shape of something unfinished. For now, either can be true. Recurring dreams rarely appear evenly across a life. They tend to cluster around periods of pressure, exams, grief, upheaval, seasons of uncertainty. Studies find that people report more frequent recurring dreams when their waking stress is higher, and fewer as circumstances calm. This ebb and flow fits neatly with the idea that these dreams track unresolved emotional weight. When a chapter feels unsettled, the same scene may return more often. When the weight lifts, the dream may quietly retire. It is one reason many people notice a familiar dream reappear during a hard season, long after they first dreamed it. The mind seems to reach for old imagery to carry new tension, returning to a scene it already knows how to build. Notice how a recurring dream can repeat while never being quite identical. Often the core stays fixed. The flood, the missed train, the empty examination hall, while small details shift from night to night. The setting may change color. The cast may rearrange. The ending may arrive sooner or later. Researchers see in this a clue about how dreams are made. Not replayed like a recording, but rebuilt each time from the same emotional blueprint. What returns is the feeling and its central situation, reassembled anew. This is why a recurring dream can feel both deeply familiar and slightly strange at once. You are not watching the same film again. You are watching your mind construct the same story from memory, fresh each night. Many recurring dreams begin in childhood. Surveys find that children report them often, and that a dream first dreamed at 7 or 8 can return, unchanged in feeling, well into adulthood. The young brain, still learning to manage large emotions, may lean on these repeated scenes as it practices fear and safety. Some researchers suspect that childhood recurring dreams reflect the mind rehearsing how to cope with a world it does not yet fully understand. What is striking is their persistence, the way a particular corridor or shadow can wait, dormir, and reappear years later during a moment of stress. It suggests these dreams are anchored deep, tied to emotional memory that the passing years do not simply erase. Part of what gives recurring dreams their strange, looping quality lies in which parts of the brain stay awake during REM sleep. The dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the region behind your forehead that handles planning, logic, and self-reflection, grows notably quiet. Meanwhile, emotional and visual centers stay lively. With the brain's inner critic dimmed, dreams can repeat an illogical scene without the sleeping mind objecting. You do not think, within the dream, that you have been here before. The recognition comes only on waking. This quieting may also be why recurring dreams resist easy control. The part of you that might redirect the story is largely offline, leaving the emotional core free to build its familiar scene without interruption. Recurring dreams and nightmares overlap, but they are not the same thing. A nightmare is defined by fear strong enough to wake you. A recurring dream is defined by repetition, whether or not it fully wakes you. The two often meet. Many recurring dreams are unpleasant, and some recurring nightmares return for years. Sleep researchers pay special attention when a distressing dream repeats frequently, since persistent nightmares can be tied to unresolved stress. Yet most recurring dreams sit in gentler territory, uneasy rather than terrifying, familiar rather than shocking. Recognizing the difference helps. A scene that returns softly, night after night, is usually not a warning. More often it is simply the mind, in its quiet way, revisiting. Whether you remember a recurring dream at all depends on delicate timing. Dreams fade quickly. The memory of one can dissolve within minutes of waking unless something holds it. People who wake directly from REM sleep, as often happens in the early morning, are far more likely to carry a dream into the day. This is why some people believe they rarely dream, while others recall vivid scenes each night. The dreams may be equally present, only the remembering differs. A recurring dream that seems to appear suddenly after years may have been returning quietly all along, unremembered. What changes is not always the dreaming, but whether the waking mind happens to catch it as it passes through that morning doorway. Even when the images of a recurring dream blur, its emotional signature often remains. You may wake unable to describe the scene, yet certain the feeling was one you have known before in sleep. The same helplessness, the same searching, the same quiet dread. Researchers note that the emotional core of a dream tends to be its most stable and memorable element. This fits the idea that these dreams are organized around feeling rather than plot. The story is scaffolding. The emotion is the point. It may be why a recurring dream can feel so significant even when you cannot recall what happened. What returns most faithfully is not the events, but the mood the sleeping mind keeps coming back to visit. Recurring dreams appear across cultures and eras, with a surprising consistency in their themes. People on different continents, speaking different languages, report the same small family of returning scenes. Falling, being pursued, teeth loosening, appearing unprepared or exposed. This shared vocabulary suggests these dreams tap into something common to the human mind, rather than the particulars of any one life. Whatever process builds them seems to draw on emotions and situations that nearly everyone encounters. Vulnerability, loss of control, the fear of being found wanting. The universality is itself a clue. It hints that recurring dreams are not merely personal quirks, but a widespread feature of how the sleeping brain works with feeling. Wherever and whoever the dreamer happens to be. Sleep and memory are woven tightly together, and the night is not passive in the work. Across its stages, the brain sorts through experience, strengthening some memories, loosening others, linking the new to the old. REM sleep, when most dreaming occurs, appears especially involved with emotional and associative memory. A recurring dream may sit right inside this nightly sorting. Returning to a memory, the brain has not finished filing away. Some scientists picture it as the mind revisiting an open loop, testing whether it can be closed, whether or not closure ever comes. The returning itself seems part of how sleep tends the emotional archive, reopening the same drawer, gently, until something about it finally settles into place. There is a tender detail in the research. Recurring dreams often stop when the concern behind them eases. Studies that follow people over time find that as a stressful situation resolves in waking life, the matching dream tends to grow less frequent, then fade. Some researchers treat this as quiet evidence for the processing idea. The dream retiring once its emotional work, whatever it was, is no longer needed. Others read it more simply, as a dream reflecting a concern that has passed. Either way, the pattern offers a gentle reassurance. A dream that has returned for a long time is not always a permanent fixture. When the feeling underneath it finally settles, the scene, too, often tends to let you go. It is tempting to look up what a recurring dream means, as if each image carried a fixed definition. Sleep scientists urge more caution. Research does not support the idea of a universal dream dictionary, where falling always means one thing and water another. The meaning of a returning scene appears deeply personal, tied to your own memories and the emotions your mind has attached to them. A staircase that unsettles one dreamer may comfort another. What seems consistent is not the symbol, but the process. The brain returning to feeling through imagery drawn from a single life. If a recurring dream holds meaning for you, that meaning lives in your own associations, quietly assembled over years, and not in any outside key. We have arrived at a resting point, and it is worth gathering what these first steps have shown. A recurring dream, we can now say, is a common and usually uneasy scene, built in REM from emotionally marked memories, and continuous with the concerns of waking life. It tends to intensify with stress and fade as things settle. That much rests on reasonably solid ground. What remains open is the harder half of our question. Not what these dreams are, but what they are for, and whether the replay merely reflects unfinished feeling or somehow works upon it. That distinction, still unsettled among scientists, is where the next arc of tonight begins to move. For now, let the question rest. The first part of our journey ends here. Your breath has carried you this far. A soft subscribe helps more restless souls find this space. Now, let's rest for a moment, one sleepy soul at a time. Right now, as you lie still, your brain is drifting toward the very state where recurring dreams are made. Not with effort. Simply because you have stopped holding the day so tightly. The emotional centers that build those returning scenes are quietly stirring, even now, beneath the surface of this calm. The question that just opened, whether a dream that repeats is working on something, or only showing you something unfinished, is not an abstract puzzle. It lives in the same nightly machinery that is beginning to hum around you as you settle. You do not need to solve it. The mind already knows how to return to what matters. What comes next begins to follow that returning, gently, toward what these dreams might be for. Let your breath slow. We move on together. Consider what your brain is doing while you sleep, quietly, without any instruction from you. Across the night it revisits fragments of the day, strengthening some connections and letting others fade. A process researchers call memory consolidation. It is not passive storage. It is more like a slow sorting, where experience is replayed, wired, and gradually woven into what you already know. Dreams appear to draw on this same machinery, borrowing images and feelings from memories being handled that night. So when a scenario returns again and again, one gentle possibility is that it keeps being selected for this nightly sorting, though why it should be selected so faithfully remains contested. Deep within each temporal lobe sits the hippocampus, a curled structure that helps bind the scattered pieces of an event into a single memory. During sleep, it appears to replay recent experience. Neurons that fired in a certain order while you were awake fire in that same order again, only faster, compressed into brief bursts. This replay is thought to help move memories toward longer-term storage in the cortex. It is easy to imagine a recurring dream as one of these sequences being rehearsed on a loop. But the link between measured replay in the lab and the felt story of a dream is still genuinely uncertain. There is a particular electrical signature that accompanies this replay. Fast ripples of activity, lasting a fraction of a second, that pass across the hippocampus during deep sleep. Scientists call them sharp wave ripples, and they tend to coincide with those compressed replays of recent experience. They seem to open brief windows in which the hippocampus and the cortex speak to each other, handing memories slowly outward. If a memory carries strong emotional charge, some evidence suggests it may be favored during these windows, replayed more often. Whether that favoring is what pins a scenario into a recurring dream, though, remains an open and debated question. Notice how many recurring dreams carry a distinct emotional color: dread, longing, embarrassment, the ache of something unfinished. Much of this may trace to REM sleep, the stage where the brain is nearly as active as waking, yet the body lies still. During REM, regions that handle emotion grow busy while the chemistry that signals alarm quiets down. One influential idea is that REM lets you revisit emotional memories in a calmer internal climate, softening their sting over successive nights. When a scenario keeps returning with its charge intact, it may be that this softening has stalled, a possibility still under active study rather than a settled account. Picture two almond-shaped clusters deep in the brain, one on each side. The amygdala. They act something like a salience detector, marking which experiences matter enough to remember. When an event stirs fear, shame, or strong desire, the amygdala tags it, and that tag appears to raise the memory's priority during later sleep. Emotionally charged memories are often consolidated more strongly than neutral ones, as if the brain sets aside extra care for what felt important. A recurring dream may draw on a memory the amygdala flagged heavily long ago, though exactly how such tagging becomes nightly repetition is not fully understood. Something curious emerges when researchers track which memories return in sleep. Neutral details tend to blur and drop away, while emotionally intense moments are reactivated more often and held longer. This selective reactivation may help explain why your quiet, ordinary days rarely reappear in dreams. Yet a single frightening or unresolved event can echo for years. The emotional weight seems to act like a bias, tilting the night sorting toward material that still carries a strong signal. It is a plausible thread connecting feeling to repetition, but the leap from stronger reactivation to a fixed, looping storyline remains something science has not firmly closed. When something is left unfinished, the mind seems reluctant to set it down. Psychologists have long noticed that incomplete tasks and unresolved feelings linger in awareness more than settled ones. A pull, sometimes described as the tension of the unresolved. Some sleep researchers suspect a related pattern at night. Memories tied to conflicts you have not worked through may be reactivated more insistently, as though the brain keeps returning to a problem it cannot yet close. A recurring dream might, in this view, be that unfinished emotional business surfacing again and again. It is an appealing explanation, and still very much a contested one. Consider the network that hums when your attention drifts inward. The default mode network, a set of midline brain regions active when you are not focused on the outside world. It is closely linked to self-referential thought, memories about you, imagined futures, the ongoing story of who you are. This same network stays notably active during dreaming, because recurring dreams so often center on the self, your failure, your loss, your exposure. Some researchers propose the default mode network helps shape their deeply personal quality. Whether it drives the repetition or simply colors, it is a distinction the evidence has not yet settled. There is a view of dreaming as a kind of intensified daydream, the mind wandering, unrestrained by the outside world or by the focused, deliberate control of waking. In this picture, dreaming and daytime mind-wandering share overlapping machinery, drawing on the same self-referential circuits. Left to roam, the brain gravitates toward what feels unresolved or emotionally alive, revisiting familiar territory. A scenario that returns nightly might simply be one of these well-worn grooves, a path the wandering mind keeps finding in the dark. Yet dreaming is not identical to waking thought, and how far the comparison holds is still debated. Long stretches of stress leave a chemical fingerprint that reaches into sleep. Cortisol, the body's main stress hormone, tends to rise across the second half of the night, overlapping with the REM-rich hours when emotional dreams are most likely. Elevated stress is associated with more frequent, more vivid, and more repetitive, unpleasant dreams. It is tempting to picture a feedback loop. Waking pressure raises nighttime arousal, which stirs the same anxious scenario, which leaves you less rested to face the next day. Whether stress truly locks a dream into repetition or merely raises the odds of its return is not yet clear. While you sleep, your brain appears to do a quiet kind of housekeeping. One leading idea: the synaptic homeostasis hypothesis suggests that connections strengthened during the day are broadly scaled back at night, so the whole system does not saturate. In this pruning, weaker links fade while the strongest survive, and a memory carrying intense emotion may sit among the strongest. If a scenario is anchored by connections too robust to be trimmed, it could remain available to resurface night after night. This offers a mechanical hint at why some material persists, though its tie to any specific recurring dream stays speculative. There is an old principle in neuroscience, often summarized as cells that fire together, wire together. Each time a set of neurons activates in concert, the connections between them grow a little stronger, a little more easily triggered again. An experience relived many times, replayed in sleep, revisited in worry, may carve an especially deep channel through this repeated firing. The emotional weight you feel in a recurring dream might correspond, loosely, to how strongly that circuit has been reinforced. The heavier the well-worn path, the more readily the mind may slip back into it. This mapping from felt weight to wiring, though, remains an interpretation. Some scientists propose that dreaming carries a rehearsal function, a safe, internal arena where the brain can practice responses to threats without real danger. In this view, dreams of being chased, falling, or failing are not malfunctions, but simulations, letting you run through peril while your body rests. A scenario that repeats might be one the brain keeps rehearsing because it senses the threat as still unmastered. It is a compelling frame for why frightening dreams recur, and one that fits how often such dreams echo waking fears. Still, it is a hypothesis among several, and not every recurring dream fits its logic. Here is a thread that may draw the night's mechanisms together. In gentle processing, an emotional memory is thought to be revisited and gradually stripped of its intensity, until it can be recalled without the old alarm. When that softening fails to complete, when the memory is reactivated yet never quite disarmed, it may keep returning in nearly the same form. A recurring dream could be the visible edge of a memory that is strongly consolidated but not yet emotionally resolved, replayed faithfully, night after night, because the loop that would release it has not closed. This remains a working idea, not a settled verdict. Step back, and a pattern begins to show through everything you have heard. The same machinery that files a day into memory. Replay in the hippocampus. Salience marked by the amygdala. The self, turned over by the default mode network, seems to favor exactly what is charged and unfinished. The question you began with was why one scenario replays on a loop for years. It is quietly turning into a different question. Not why the mind repeats, but what it is still trying and failing to lay to rest. What keeps that loop from closing is where the next stretch leans. The answer, if there is one, stays contested. The night has slowed around you, the questions loosening their grip, your breath stretching a little longer between thoughts. Nothing here asks to be solved tonight. You can let the loop keep turning without chasing it. Let one slow breath leave you, and we drift on together into what the mind is still holding. Perhaps the most widely reported recurring dream of all is the one where something is coming for you. In surveys gathered across many countries, being chased sits at the top of the list. A pursuer you cannot quite see. Legs that will not carry you fast enough. One influential idea. The threat simulation theory, proposed by researcher Rehearsal, suggests the sleeping brain may rehearse, escape from danger, keeping ancient survival circuits gently exercised through the night. It is a hypothesis, not a settled fact. What feels certain is the body's signature, a quickened pulse, the sense of running through thick air. Notice, if you can, how the chase rarely resolves. It simply loops. Consider the sensation of falling, another theme that returns again and again. Sometimes it arrives at the very edge of sleep as a hypnic jerk, a harmless muscle twitch as the body finally lets go. But recurring falling dreams are something else, unfolding deeper in the night. Researchers connect them loosely to the vestibular system, the inner ear network that tracks balance even while you rest. When that quiet sense of grounding loosens, the dreaming mind may translate it into empty space beneath your feet. Many people describe falling dreams during stressful stretches, when waking life itself feels unsteady. Whether that link is genuine meaning or gentle coincidence remains, honestly, an open question. There is a stranger theme, and a remarkably common one. Teeth crumbling, loosening, spilling into your open hands. It appears across wildly different cultures, which has long puzzled dream researchers. A 2018 study from Tel Aviv University found that teeth dreams correlated more closely with dental tension, jaw clenching during sleep, called bruxism, than with any single emotional stressor, though the two often travel together. Older folk traditions once read falling teeth as omens, but there is no evidence for that. What the science gently suggests is simpler. A real sensation in your sleeping jaw may be woven directly into the dream's imagery. Your body, it seems, whispers quietly into the story. Think back, if you dare, to the exam you never studied for, the classroom you cannot find, the paper written in a language you cannot read. This dream is famous for outlasting school itself, returning to people decades after their final test. Psychologists often link it to evaluation anxiety, those moments in waking life where you feel measured, judged, or somehow unprepared. Curiously, one French study found that students who dreamed of exam failure the night before actually performed slightly better, as if the rehearsal quietly sharpened them. The theme may be less about school and more about the old fear of being found wanting. Let that particular fear rest a moment. Now picture the dream of standing exposed, undressed in a public place while everyone around you seems entirely unbothered. It is one of the oldest recorded dream themes. Even ancient writers described it plainly. Modern psychology tends to read it not as prophecy, but as a pattern that clusters with feelings of vulnerability, of being seen before you feel quite ready. Notice a telling detail many people report. In the dream, the exposure often matters far more to you than to anyone else. That quiet asymmetry is part of why interpreters connect it to self-consciousness rather than the body itself. Still, it remains a reading, an association, never a fixed decoding of the mind. Some recurring dreams are quieter, and no less persistent. The dream of being lost. You are late for something important, wandering corridors that rearrange themselves, missing a train that will not wait for you. Researchers who study dream content note that these scenarios tend to rise during periods of transition, when waking routines feel out of your hands. The common thread is control, or its absence, a destination you cannot reach, time slipping faster than your steps. It would be easy to call this a symbol with one fixed meaning, but the honest position is gentler. It is a pattern, one that tends to surface when life itself feels a little unmapped. Here is a warmer variation, reported more often than you might expect. The dream of discovering rooms in your own home you never knew were there. A door swings open onto a whole wing, dusty and waiting in the half-light. Unlike the chase or the fall, this theme rarely carries fear. People wake curious, sometimes even moved. Some psychologists, drawing loosely on older ideas about the self, read the house as an image of the mind, its hidden rooms as unexplored parts of who you are. That interpretation is poetic rather than proven, a reflection more than a measurement. Yet the feeling it leaves behind, of unexpected space within you, is real enough to notice. Step back from any single theme, and a quiet pattern begins to connect them. Sleep researchers have found that recurring dreams cluster with stress and anxiety more reliably than with almost anything else. The continuity hypothesis offers one gentle explanation. Dreams tend to echo the concerns that occupy your waking mind, so a worry carried for months may return, night after night, wearing the very same costume. Elevated cortisol, the body's stress hormone, appears to make vivid, emotional dreaming more likely. This does not mean a recurring dream is a diagnosis. It suggests the loop may be less a message to decode than a signal that something in you is asking, softly, to be tended. You just heard that the loop may be less a riddle to solve than a signal. Something in you asking, gently, to be tended. Feel where that lands in your body right now. Perhaps a small tightness that has been waiting a long while to be noticed rather than fixed. You do not have to answer the dream tonight. You only have to let it be held, the way still water holds a fallen leaf. And as the breath grows a little longer, a little slower, the hours ahead lean toward the strangest part of all: why some of these loops hold on for years. Why should a person in Tokyo and a person in Toronto dream the same falling, the same lost teeth? The cross-cultural sameness of these themes points toward something shared beneath culture: a common human body and brain. Everyone sleeps with the same vestibular system, the same threat circuitry, the same jaw that can clench quietly in the dark. So the raw sensations that seed these dreams are nearly universal, even when the stories dressing them differ from place to place. What varies is the interpretation. A falling dream may feel like a warning in one tradition and a release in another. The image travels the whole world. The meaning, tellingly, is stitched on locally by each dreamer. And so the honest caveat, the one careful researchers always return to: there is no fixed dictionary of dreams. No theme means one guaranteed thing. No chart can decode your night with real certainty. What the evidence supports is patterns. Being chased tends to cluster with threat. Exams with judgment. Never a locked, one-to-one key. Notice how this quietly turns our question. You began by asking why the same scene replays for years. Now a deeper puzzle surfaces. Not what the loop means, but what keeps it running long after the fear that first lit it has faded. That is the tension the coming hours will follow. Slowly. Ask people when their recurring dreams tend to return, and a pattern surfaces almost every time. They come back in the hard seasons, the weeks of pressure, grief, or worry, when the waking mind is already stretched thin. Sleep researchers have measured this directly. People moving through stressful stretches of life report recurring dreams far more often than those in calmer ones. The dream is not random weather. It seems to rise with the tide of whatever troubles you. And that first clue points straight toward tonight's quiet question: why a single scene should return, again and again, sometimes across years. There is a simple idea in dream science that explains much of this, and it is called the continuity hypothesis. It holds that dreams are not a sealed, separate world, but a continuation of waking life. The same concerns, relationships, and fears, replayed in a stranger grammar. What fills your days tends to fill your nights. So, a worry you carry for months, unresolved, has months of chances to surface in sleep. Seen this way, a recurring dream is less a mystery than a mirror, returning you faithfully to whatever your waking mind has not yet been able to set down. Follow the same people across time, and the link grows clearer still. Those who score higher on measures of anxiety and daily stress report more frequent recurring dreams. And when their stress eases, the dreams often thin out with it. Researchers tracking dream diaries alongside mood have watched this rise and fall move in step. It suggests the recurring dream behaves almost like a gauge, a needle that climbs when inner pressure climbs. This does not mean stress alone creates the dream. But stress appears to be one of its most reliable companions, arriving and departing on a strikingly similar schedule. It helps, here, to draw a careful line between two things often blurred together. A recurring dream and a recurring nightmare are not the same event. Many recurring dreams are merely strange or unsettling without ever becoming terrifying. A familiar house with an extra room. A test you cannot find. Teeth loosening in your mouth. A recurring nightmare, by contrast, is defined by fear sharp enough to wake you. Both can repeat for years, but they sit at different depths. And, as we will see, they may run on somewhat different machinery. The distinction matters more than it first appears. Consider what a nightmare actually is. In the language of sleep medicine, it is a vivid, disturbing dream, usually rising out of REM sleep in the later half of the night, intense enough to pull you fully awake and leave the fear lingering afterward. Unlike an ordinary bad dream, you remember it clearly, and the dread does not dissolve the moment your eyes open. A recurring nightmare simply does this on repeat. The same terror, or close variations of it, returning night after night. For some, it stays occasional. For others, it becomes a nightly visitor they come to quietly dread meeting. One influential idea tries to explain why fear should haunt our sleep at all. Called the threat simulation theory. It proposes that dreaming evolved in part as a kind of rehearsal, a safe arena in which the sleeping brain practices spotting and escaping danger. In our distant past, the dreamer who ran through predators by night may have reacted a little faster by day. If that is right, a frightening dream is not a malfunction, but a drill. And a recurring one might be a drill the mind keeps running, as though the threat it models had not yet been fully mastered. This remains a hypothesis, still debated among scientists. Yet the theory strains against a stubborn fact. Most recurring dreams are not rehearsals of real dangers you might actually meet. Falling endlessly, wandering a shifting building, arriving unprepared for an exam long since passed. These threaten nothing in waking life. What they seem to carry instead is a feeling. Exposure, helplessness, the sense of being tested and found wanting. This has drawn many researchers toward a softer reading. Perhaps the recurring dream is less about surviving a threat than about metabolizing an emotion, returning, in symbol after symbol, to a knot of feeling the waking self has not yet managed to untie. Now we come to the exception that reshapes everything, and it must be approached gently, because it touches real suffering. In the aftermath of trauma, some people develop nightmares of a very different kind. Where ordinary, recurring dreams speak in metaphor, these often replay the actual event, or fragments of it, with painful fidelity. The same moment, the same room, the same helplessness, returning almost unchanged. Post-traumatic nightmares are among the most recognized and studied forms of recurring dream, and their sheer literalness marks them out. They are not symbols circling a feeling. They are the memory itself, refusing to close. This literal quality is precisely what sets post-traumatic replay apart. A typical dream, even a distressing one, tends to weave memory into odd new shapes. Faces blending, places dissolving into other places. The traumatic nightmare often resists that weaving. It returns to the same fixed images with little of the usual dreamlike drift, as if the mind could not gain enough distance to reshape them. Clinicians read this as a sign that the memory has not been fully processed and filed away with the rest. Instead, it stays raw and near the surface, breaking through the same way each night, still waiting to be integrated. To understand why, it helps to know what healthy sleep usually does with a painful memory. During certain stretches of dreaming sleep, the brain appears to revisit the day's emotional events in a setting where the body's alarm chemistry runs quieter than in waking. In that calmer chemical bath, the theory goes, a memory can slowly be stripped of some of its sting while its lesson is kept. In trauma, this gentle overnight filing seems to falter. The memory is revisited, but the fear is not eased, so it returns intact, as though the night's work kept stalling at the very same step. How reliably sleep performs this softening is still under study. There is real hope in this corner of the science, and it is worth stating plainly. One of the best supported treatments for chronic nightmares does not try to suppress them at all. Called imagery rehearsal therapy, it asks a person, while awake, to take the recurring nightmare and deliberately rewrite its ending into something less threatening, then to picture that new version, gently, by day. Across multiple clinical trials, the nightmares grow less frequent and less intense. It shows these loops are not fixed. Given a new script and a little practice, the sleeping mind can, remarkably often, be coaxed toward a kinder path. Turn now to the very young, where recurring dreams are strikingly common. Ask adults to recall a dream that repeated in childhood, and a great many can, often instantly. The chasing figure, the shape at the door, the endless falling. Children report recurring dreams far more often than adults do, and theirs lean heavily toward fear and pursuit. Far from a sign that something is wrong. This seems an ordinary part of growing up. A young mind, still learning to handle big and unfamiliar feelings, appears to return to them in sleep the way a child returns to a hard lesson until it is learned. Why should the young dream this way? One gentle explanation ties it to the slow development of emotional control. A child's world is full of feelings too large for the tools they yet possess. Fear, powerlessness, the confusion of a day that did not go their way. The recurring dream may be one of the mind's early workshops for these emotions, a place to meet them again in the dark and, little by little, grow less overwhelmed. The repetition is not cruelty. It looks far more like practice. The same emotional exercise, repeated quietly, until the growing brain builds the strength to hold it more easily. And here is the reassuring part. For most people, these childhood dreams fade. As the years pass and the machinery of emotional regulation matures, the chasing figure stops returning. The falling grows rare. The dreams do not usually need to be solved or interpreted away. They loosen on their own, as the child who once needed them becomes an adult who no longer does. This fading is itself a clue worth holding. A recurring dream, it hints, is bound to a particular stretch of inner life. And when that stretch is outgrown, the dream that belonged to it tends to quietly release its grip. Step back, and something in tonight's question begins to turn. We started by asking why a single scene should replay for years, as if the answer lay in the scene itself, in its symbols, waiting to be decoded. But look at what keeps surfacing. The dreams that rise with stress and fall when it lifts. The childhood loops that fade as feelings are outgrown. The traumatic nightmares that repeat until a memory is finally integrated. Across all of them, the constant is never the image. It is an unfinished feeling. Perhaps the recurring dream is not asking to be understood at all, but to be completed. This shift has quiet support in the dream research itself. When scientists track a single person's recurring dream over time, they often find the surface details drifting while the core emotion holds steady. The setting changes. The threat changes. But the feeling, trapped, exposed, pursued, stays remarkably constant. It is as though the emotion is the true subject, and the imagery merely the costume it happens to wear that night. Some call this an emotional continuity, not the same story repeating, but the same feeling, still seeking a form. The dream returns not to a scene you must revisit, but to a knot not yet loosened. Watch a recurring dream closely over months, and you may notice it is rarely a perfect copy. More often, it is a theme with variations, the same emotional key in different arrangements. The pursued dreamer runs down a new street. The flooded house has a different staircase. The missed exam is for a class you never took. These small mutations matter. They hint that the mind is not simply stuck on replay, but turning the feeling over, trying it from fresh angles. A dream that shifts and experiments may be a mind at work, not trapped, but reaching, perhaps, toward a resolution it cannot yet find. And this points to one of the most telling observations of all. Recurring dreams often stop, and they tend to stop not when you decode them, but when the feeling beneath them settles. People describe a dream that haunted them for years, simply not returning after a grief was grieved, a fear outgrown, a hard decision finally made. The loop that seemed permanent often turns out to have been conditional all along, tied to an emotional account that stayed open. Close the account in waking life, and the nightly reminder often falls quiet on its own, as though it had only ever been waiting for exactly that. You may have lived a version of this yourself. The dream of the school you could never navigate. Gone once you made peace with a chapter of your past. The dream of searching for someone, ending after a loss was fully mourned. These are not proof in the strict scientific sense. Memory is a soft witness, and we notice endings more than absences. But the pattern recurs too often to wave away. Again and again, the recurring dream reads less like a fixed sentence and more like a held breath. 1. The mind often releases the moment whatever it was holding is, at last, resolved. Here, though, honesty asks us to slow down, because we have reached genuinely contested ground. The idea that dreams help regulate our emotions, that the recurring dream is the mind working quietly toward repair, is a hypothesis, not a settled fact. It is intuitive, much loved, and supported by real findings. But it is also fiercely debated among sleep scientists, some of whom argue that dreams may be a byproduct of the sleeping brain rather than a tool it wields on purpose. The comfort of the theory should not be mistaken for its proof. What follows, then, must be held with an open hand. On one side stands a body of appealing evidence. Studies of dreaming sleep show the brain's emotional centers active while its stress chemistry runs low, a combination that looks well suited to diffusing difficult feelings overnight. People allowed to dream after an upsetting experience sometimes react more calmly to it the following day. From this comes the graceful image of dreaming as a kind of nightly therapy, slowly draining the charge from what troubles us. If true, it would explain much about recurring dreams, why they cluster around distress, and why they fade once their emotional work is somehow, finally, done. But the other side raises a hard and fair objection, and post-traumatic nightmares are its sharpest example. If dreaming reliably drained the sting from painful memories, why do these nightmares repeat the same terror for years without relief, far from healing? They seem to re-injure. Critics note, too, that much of the supporting evidence is correlational. Dreams and mood move together, but which drives which stays unclear. Some researchers suspect dreaming may accompany emotional processing without actually causing it. The truth, as so often, likely lives in the unglamorous middle, still being patiently worked out in sleep laboratories tonight. Hold both sides together, and a careful picture forms. Whether or not dreaming actively repairs our feelings, the recurring dream behaves, at the very least, like a marker of something unfinished. It rises when a feeling is unresolved and recedes when it settles, the way a light stays on in a room whose task is not yet done. You need not believe the dream is doing therapeutic work to notice that it tracks, faithfully, the state of an inner account. It may be a repair in progress, or merely a signal that repair is still needed. Either way, it points at a loop left open. There is a quiet relief in this, if you let it settle. It means a recurring dream is probably not a coded message you have failed to read, nor a warning you must decipher before it is too late. It is far more likely the visible edge of a feeling still in motion, ordinary, human, and in no hurry at all. You do not have to solve it tonight. You do not have to solve it ever. feelings tend to complete themselves, in their own time, through living rather than analysis. And when this one does, the dream that carried it will very likely loosen too. So the shape of an answer finally settles, held gently, as befits contested ground. A recurring dream looks less like a message than a loop left open, the mind returning, night after night, to the same emotional doorway, until the feeling waiting behind it settles enough to let the door swing shut. The scene may repeat for years, but the scene was never truly the point. It was only the form a still open feeling kept reaching for. And loops, unlike sentences, are not meant to be read. They are meant, in their own unhurried time, simply to be closed. Notice that nothing here is asking you to solve anything. Whatever feeling has been circling your own sleep, quiet, familiar, returning, it does not need to be decoded tonight. A loop closes not by force, but by settling. And settling is something your body already knows how to do without instruction. Let the returning thing simply be, exactly as it is, without pulling it apart to see how it works. The doorway you keep arriving at will open when it is ready, and not one moment sooner. For now, there is nothing to finish. You can let the whole unresolved weight of it rest here, and stay unfinished, and be enough. Here is something worth resting on. Recurring dreams are common. Most people, at some point, meet the same scene again and again. Surveys suggest a clear majority of adults know at least one dream that returns. If yours has visited for years, you are not broken, and you are not alone. The loop is a familiar part of being human, shared by far more sleepers than you might ever guess in the quiet of your own night. The returning dream is not a warning bell. Your sleeping mind tends to circle the concerns that matter most to you while you are awake, a pattern researchers call continuity. The loop is less an alarm and more an echo, replaying a feeling that hasn't yet been fully met in daylight. Seen this way, the dream is not malfunctioning at all. It is doing what minds quietly do, returning, again and again, to what still asks for attention. There is a gentle, well-studied way to work with a dream that keeps returning. It is called imagery rehearsal, and it begins while you are awake. You take the familiar dream and, instead of dreading it, you imagine a different ending, one that feels a little safer, a little kinder. You give the story somewhere new to go. The mind, it turns out, is remarkably willing to learn a gentler script when you offer it one. The method is softer than it sounds. In the daytime, you picture your new ending for only a few minutes, calmly, the way you might hum a familiar song. No forcing, no reliving the fear. Just quietly running the kinder version until it begins to feel natural. Repeated over a handful of days, the rewritten dream can start to surface at night in place of the old one. You are not erasing the dream. You are teaching it a new path home. Of all the approaches, This one carries the strongest support. Clinical trials have found that rehearsing a new ending reduces how often distressing dreams return, and how heavy they feel when they do. Sleep medicine guidelines now list it among the first things to try for chronic nightmares. It asks for no medication, and it hands the pen back to you. The dream that once arrived unbidden becomes, slowly, something you help to write. Some people find it helps simply to write the dream down. In the soft minutes after waking, before the images fade, you set them on paper. The place, the figures, the way it ended. Naming a dream can loosen its grip, turning something that loomed in the dark into a few quiet lines you can read by morning light. The page holds it now, steady and small, so that you no longer have to carry it entirely alone. Alongside the dream, it can help to write the feeling underneath it. Not the plot, but the ache, the worry, the grief, the thing left unsaid. Studies on expressive writing suggest that putting a difficult emotion into words can ease its weight over time. The recurring dream often carries a feeling that daylight keeps too busy to notice. Given a page and a little honesty, that feeling finally has somewhere gentle to land. Often the loop is anchored to something waking life hasn't resolved. A strained relationship, a looming change, a loss not fully grieved. When a dream keeps returning, it can be worth asking, gently, what in the day it might be pointing toward. You need not solve everything tonight, but naming the real concern, the one the dream keeps quietly circling, is very often where the loosening begins, long before the scene itself ever changes. And here is a tender thing researchers have noticed. When the waking worry finally eases, the dream tends to ease too. The scene that returned for months may visit less, then less, then one night simply not arrive. Dreams often follow the shape of our lives. As the thing they echoed settles into place, so, very often, do they, quietly, without ceremony, the way a tide slips out while no one is watching the shore. There is another door, though a subtler one. Some sleepers learn to notice, mid-dream, that they are dreaming, a state called lucidity. In that moment, the dream becomes softer, less absolute. The chase need not be run. The fall need not be feared. Simply knowing this is a dream can drain the scene of its power. The way a single light left on can gentle a whole dark room until its shadows lose their edge. A few people, once lucid, can even reshape the dream, turn to face what pursued them, or let the story end another way. Small studies suggest this may help with recurring nightmares. Though the evidence is younger and gentler than for rewriting while awake, lucidity is not easily willed, and it need not be chased. But for some, it becomes one more quiet way the old loop learns, in time, to bend. Much of the work happens before sleep, in the hour you give yourself. A calm, unhurried wind down, dim light, slow breath, a mind allowed to to settle, tends to soften the whole night's weather. Dreams born from a peaceful evening are often gentler than those born from a racing one. You cannot script your dreams directly, but you can quietly prepare the ground they grow from. And that, more than you'd think, matters. A few small things shape that ground as well. Alcohol late in the evening can stir the second half of the night, when the most vivid dreams gather, sometimes making them louder. A cool, dark, familiar room tends to steady sleep instead. None of this is a rule to enforce, only a set of gentle conditions. Kindness toward your body in the evening turns out to be, very simply, kindness toward your dreams. It helps to remember what the dream is really made of. Not the teeth, not the falling, not the endless hallway, but the feeling those images carry. Two people may dream in entirely different scenes and wake with the very same ache. The loop returns for the emotion, not the picture. And an emotion, unlike a monster, is something you can turn toward slowly and hold and let soften in your own good time. So here, near the end, the question quietly turns. We began by asking why the same dream returns for years. Across all these gentle methods, the rewritten ending, the honest page, the tended stressor, one thread runs through them. None of them fight the dream. Each one meets the feeling beneath it. Perhaps the loop was never asking to be solved. Perhaps it was only ever asking to be felt. That is where the last few facts settle. To meet a feeling gently is simpler than it sounds, and harder. It means, in a quiet waking moment, letting the emotion the dream carried simply be here, without fixing it, without pushing it away. A slow breath, a hand resting on the chest. The thought, this is allowed to be felt. The dream brought the feeling to the surface. You need only stay with it a little, kindly, until it has been met. It can change everything to see the dream as a messenger rather than an enemy. It is not trying to frighten you for its own sake. It is carrying something you have been too busy, or too tired, or too brave to feel by day. Met with a little compassion, the same you would offer a frightened friend, the messenger has far less need to keep knocking so loudly at your door. Recurring dreams tend to soften across a lifetime. Many that haunt childhood, the chase, the dark stare, quietly retire as we grow. Others arrive with a hard season and leave when it passes. Few return forever. If yours has stayed a long while, that does not mean it always will. Dreams, like weather, move. What feels permanent tonight is very often just something passing slowly, gently, through. For most people, a recurring dream is harmless, unsettling, perhaps, but not a sign that something is wrong with the mind. It is one of the ordinary ways a busy inner life keeps its accounts. You can hold it lightly. You need not decode every symbol or fear every return. Often the kindest response is the simplest. to notice it, to acknowledge the feeling it carried, and to let the night carry gently on. There are times, though, when a dream deserves more than gentle noticing. When nightmares follow something frightening you lived through. When they come so often that sleep itself becomes something you quietly dread. When the fear begins to spill into your days. In those seasons, the loop is not a failing to push through alone. It is a signal that kind, capable help would ease the way. Reaching for it is its own soft courage. And there is real help to reach for. Trained clinicians work with recurring nightmares every day, often using the very rewriting you've heard about tonight, sometimes alongside gentle therapy for the stress beneath. For some, a doctor may offer other support as well. The point is not that you must mend this by yourself. The point is that this is known, treatable ground, and you would be walking it with company beside you. Consider how many share your particular dream. The falling, the unprepared exam, the teeth that loosen, the familiar house with one more hidden room. These images recur not only within a single life, but across millions of them. In every language. In every age. Whatever loop returns to you tonight, somewhere another sleeper is meeting its cousin. The dream that feels most private is, quietly, one of the most human things we hold in common. The loop can loosen, not always at once, and rarely by force, but through the small, patient acts you've gathered here. A kinder ending, rehearsed. A feeling, finally met. A worry, gently named. The dream that once arrived like a locked door begins, over time, to open a little. And one night, without your noticing the exact moment, the scene that returned so faithfully may simply choose a different way. So when the dream comes again, and it may, try meeting it differently. Not with dread, not with the wish to slam it shut, but with a soft acknowledgement. I know you. I know what you carry. A loop met with recognition is already a loop beginning to rest. The knocking was never meant to last forever. It only wanted, all along, to be gently answered. And here is the tender thought to carry into sleep, offered gently, as reflection more than settled fact. For science has not fully closed this question. Perhaps the dream keeps knocking, not to frighten you, but to be felt. Perhaps, when you meet its feeling kindly while awake, the loop can finally rest. Whether or not that is the whole truth, it is a kind way to hold the dark. Let it be enough for tonight. 100 facts ago, you came in carrying a dream that would not leave. The same scene, returning for reasons no one had yet named. Tonight it has a mechanism, and more than that, it has a response. You followed the loop from its roots in waking life to the quiet rewriting that can change its ending. You learned that the images were never the point. The feeling beneath them was. What began as a scene you dreaded has become, slowly, a message you can finally meet. The dream was never your enemy. It was a feeling asking, patiently, to be felt. Meet it gently while you are awake, and the loop that frightened you can finally learn to rest. If tonight's quiet made the returning dream feel a little less heavy, you might leave a gentle like, subscribe, or share before you drift. It helps another restless sleeper, someone lying awake with a loop of their own, find their way to this same soft place. One quiet tap, one sleepy soul at a time. Right now, somewhere behind your eyes, the mind is already sorting the day, not to trouble you, but to tend you. The scenes it keeps are the ones that still hold a feeling, and even now it is holding them gently, asking nothing of you in return. Let your entire being dissolve into that tending. You don't need to face the dream tonight, or rewrite it, or understand it. It knows you. It has only ever wanted to be felt. Let it hold what it holds, while you let go. You can let these thoughts settle now, like a dream loosening its grip and drifting back into the dark it came from. Let your body grow heavy against the bed, held and unhurried. If sleep comes, let it carry you somewhere the loop cannot follow, somewhere the feeling has already been met. Sleepy science has spent many quiet hours in this territory, the tender country of sleep and the dreaming mind. The next hour follows the part of tonight's question this one didn't have time to finish. That hour is waiting whenever you are ready. But if your eyes are closed, stay there. Rest well, quiet one. The dream knocks only because it trusts you to answer. And tonight, gently, you have where science becomes the softest place to rest. Good night.